Imagine stepping into an arcade in 1985, with the sounds of clashing swords, roaring engines, and quarters dropping into the machines. But then, something different catches your eye. It's a wrestling game on screen, and the crowd around the machine are chanting and cheering. Two wrestlers are on the screen, doing actual moves that looked realistic at the time, at least for 1985. This game was Mat Mania, also known as Exciting Hour in Japan. And at the time, when most wrestling games were kind of stiff, robotic, and lots of times forgettable, this arcade machine gave players something new. It didn't just put you in control of a wrestler, it put you inside the show of professional wrestling. From body slams to suplexes, from the colorful cast of opponents, Mat Mania captured the theatric and chaos of pro wrestling years before games like WWF WrestleFest or WWE SmackDown made it into mainstream. This game was bold, exciting, and was truly, in my humble opinion, ahead of its time. So in this video, we're stepping back into the golden age of arcades to explore the complete story of Mat Mania, how it was created, the wrestlers that defined it, the sequel it inspired, and the lasting impact on wrestling video games. Now make no mistake about it, this isn't just another retro title, it's a forgotten pioneer that laid the foundation for everything that came after. So tighten your boots, let's ring that bell, and dive into the history of one of arcade wrestling's first true heavyweights. This is the story of Mat Mania. Now the mid-1980s was a turning point for both video games and professional wrestling. Arcades were booming once again after the crash of 1983. With titles like Punch-Out!, Kung Fu Master, and Gauntlet showing just how diverse arcade experiences could be. And at the same time, professional wrestling was exploding in popularity. The WWF was transforming wrestling from a regional attraction into a global spectacle. Hulk Hogan was on magazine covers, Ric Flair was electrifying audiences, and Technos Japan, the studio behind Mat Mania, saw this surge and realized something important. Wrestling was a show, not just a sport. If they could only somehow capture that blend of athletic competition and over-the-top theatrics, they'd have something special on their hands. But let's not forget, Technos wasn't new to wrestling games. Just 2 years earlier in 1983, they had developed Tag Team Wrestling, also distributed by Data East. Now that game was primitive by comparison. You had two wrestlers in a ring with repetitive gameplay, and the moves, in my opinion, were very limited. Now, don't get me wrong, it was fun for its time, but didn't capture the magic of actual wrestling. Still though, it gave Technos valuable experience on how to design grappling systems, animations, and pin mechanics. And I will say it's about tag team wrestling. It had a little bit of showmanship as well, especially when the guy's whispering to his opponent, kinda, you know how the heels do, they kind of whisper strategy and tactics. I thought that was a nice touch they put in the game. Now when development began on Mat Mania, and we'll just call it Exciting Hour when we're talking about the reference to Japan, the team wanted to take things further. Instead of just showing two blocky characters locked in stiff animations, they worked on giving each wrestler personality and identity. Characters were designed with flair, not Ric Flair, but just flair, like Coco Savage or the Dangerous Karate Fighter, each inspired loosely by real-world wrestling stars. More on that later. Another groundbreaking decision was to make the crowd part of the game's atmosphere. The audience wasn't just background art, and you could see a few celebrities here and there. Obviously, this is supposed to be Darth Vader in the screen, and if you look hard enough, you can see other iconic characters as well. Now, also, one thing to note, this game was years before sports games like NBA Jam or NFL Blitz made audiences feel alive, so it kind of gave Mat Mania a true sense of energy. Few games were doing that with their crowd at the time. On a technical side though, Mat Mania benefited from Techno's growing expertise with sprite-based animation. Instead of static wrestlers, you had smooth grapples for the time. You actually had legit running attacks off the ropes, and moves like body slams and suplexes that looked spectacular and painful. And the design team focused on every match to feel like a mini wrestling event, complete with the announcer at the pinfall and a championship ladder to climb. And one thing to mention real quick is this is the same voice that they used in tag team wrestling. When you know when the ref counts the 3 count, same voice. So let's talk about the release and the reception of this game. Now Mat Mania first hit Japan in arcades in 1985 under the name Exciting Hour. Developed by Technos Japan and distributed domestically by Taito, the game's timing couldn't have been better. Pro wrestling was booming worldwide, not just in the US but Japan as well, with Japanese legends like Antonio Inoki and the Giant Baba drawing huge crowds. While in the US, WWF was exploding with Hulkamania-fueled national expansion. And the arcades were already full of sports titles like Punch-Out! And Karate Champ, but nothing compared to the showmanship of pro wrestling. Now when Taito finally brought the game overseas later in 1985 as Mat Mania, it struck a chord. The cabinet artwork was bold and colorful, immediately pulling in players with visions of muscle-bound athletes locked in battle. Now let's be real here, Mat Mania wasn't a quarter eater on the scale of juggernauts like Gallagher or Pac-Man, but it did very well in spots where wrestling fandom was strong. And fans praised Mat Mania for its lively presentation and innovative mechanics. In Japan, Exciting Hour was seen as a solid addition to arcade lineups, but it was in North America that the game built a cult following. So let's talk about the gameplay and mechanics. Now at its heart, Mat Mania was just a button mashing brawler like other games of the past. It was an attempt to capture the rhythm and spectacle of an actual wrestling match. And for 1985, that was revolutionary. Now the controls are pretty basic. The game used a 2-button control scheme alongside the joystick. One button handled punching, while the other developed kicks. And simple enough to first glance, but with the smart timing and positioning, these basic attacks opened up a wide range of moves. The joystick lets you grapple when close, toss them into the ropes, or set up for slams. And pressing certain combinations of buttons will let you pull off body slams, suplexes, elbow smashes, soulbot kicks. And by today that might not seem like much, but back in the day, that was pretty impressive moveset for a wrestling game. Honestly, kind of unheard of in 1985. So let's talk about the wrestlers. First off, you played as the unnamed player wrestler, a generic heroic babyface against a series of challengers, and each character was designed with distinct traits of their own. Now your name is actually Dynamite Tommy, and that will become more fleshed out in the sequel, and your base character is strongly believed to be based on the Dynamite Kid, Tom Billington, a British wrestler famous for his explosive technical style. So you're the underdog hero of the game, fighting through the gauntlet to claim the championship, and you have a ton of moves at your disposal. Body slams, flying moves off the ropes, a pile driver, a suplex, and you can even climb on the top ropes. Pretty impressive. Next up, we got the Insane Warrior, also spelled warrior in some versions like you worry a lot, but that was obviously a typo. Inspiration for this character, styled after the Road Warrior animal in my opinion, from the Road Warriors tag team, with heavy influence from Mad Max post-apocalyptic aesthetics. Now this guy is kind of a muscle-bound powerhouse, and in my opinion, he does pretty much the same thing you can do. He has power slams, strikes, and brute force grapple. Now one thing to point out with the Insane Warrior, his moveset is basically pretty much all the same moveset you have. He does have a gorilla press as well. That's kind of his signature move. He can do the move where you come off the ropes and he jumps up and meets you in the air with basically a flying splash off the ropes. And that move, I'll explain later, becomes invaluable in the game. So moving on. Next up, we got the Karate Fighter. And this guy's inspiration is a mix of martial arts gimmicks, and he's often compared to the Great Kabuki, known for martial arts strikes and missed attacks. In this game, he doesn't have missed attacks though. And he's a wrestler who blends martial arts with pro wrestling, standing out as the foreign martial artist. And that was a common archetype in the 1980s. His signature moves for this guy is basically a flurry of karate chops. Usually what happens is when the music will change when you're kind of weak and you can be pinned, and that's when lots of times the computer opponents will do their signature moves. And this guy, the Karate Fighter, he basically had this one, he just like chopped you in the face a few times. Pretty cool move, and he did have his strikes were a little different. He did also have a flying kick off the ropes. So yeah, he had his own combination of moves. He didn't play like everybody else. He kind of had his own thing going. So thumbs up for that guy. So overall, pretty cool character. Next up, we have the Piranha, and the Piranha strongly resembles Mil Mascaras, the legendary Mexican luchador known for his colorful, toothy mask and high-flying style. Now, in my opinion, with this guy, I feel like they got the inspiration, for a luchador wrestler, but if you ask me, I don't think he really plays like a luchador. He kind of plays like a dirty fighter in a sense. So I can't really say that he does like luchador type things. He doesn't really do a lot of high flying. He does have a move where he picks you up and punches you in the face. And he does have a weird grapple. So I think definitely this guy is a heel, but I don't think he really plays like a luchador. And then next up, we got Coco Savage. And this is probably one of the harder fights in the game, probably one of the best wrestlers in the game. And he shares a lot of the moves you do as well. And obviously this guy is based off of Bobo Brazil, an iconic wrestler from back in the day, famous for breaking a lot of barriers in the sport. A very charismatic powerhouse with a brawler's presence. And Coco Savage in this game represents both raw strength, and he does it with style. And he has a couple of signature moves. He has basically a lot of the same moves you have, good at grappling, and he does have a couple of signature moves. He has one move when you're on the ground. That's one thing you really can't do. You can't really attack your opponents on the ground, but the computer can. And one of his moves is kind of like a giant swing. He grabs you by your legs and flings you across the ring. And another one he has, and he throws you off the ropes, he'll do like a spike hit. He'll like bring his hands together and slam on the side of your head or your neck. I'm not sure where exactly he hits you, but it does take some damage, but you can easily counter that move. Now, what makes Coco Savage, in my opinion, one of the harder fights in the game is he does a lot of cheap stuff. Like he'll knock you on the ground, and then whenever he picks you up and he grapples you, he'll do that thing when he hits you in the head, kind of gives you some noogies, but he's basically punching you in the head. He does that, he'll do that over and over and over until you're worn down. So if he's picking you up off the ground, there's really not much you can do in this game. Also, another thing he does is he'll shoulder rush you. So he'll do that a lot. If you're on the ground, he'll just shoulder rush you, or he'll even put it in a combo sometimes, punch you a couple times and shoulder rush. So that shoulder rush is basically, he'll just basically won't let you get up. He'll meter you, so where his animation's out, where he's attacking, and as soon as you get up, you'll go right into the shoulder charge. So yeah, he can be very cheap in this game and wear you down very quick. One of your saving graces with Coco Savage though is lots of times when he throws you into the ring, because he has a jumping body splash as well. He has it, you have it, and the Insane Warrior has it. So once he throws you in ropes, when he comes off the ropes, automatically just keep mashing your frog splash, if you want to call it, or flying splash. And well, I won't call it a frog splash. This is a flying splash, and it'll counter pretty much the moves. You both take a knockdown, but you won't get hit by his attack. And if he does it, once he goes in the air, you can do it. You can do it to react to his frog splash. So yeah, basically you guys can cancel each other out, and you'll end up on top, and he'll take the damage and you won't. So that's one of your mainstays if you're going to survive in this game. And lastly, we got the Golden Hulk, also known as Blues Bloody in Japan. Now, primarily modeled after Bruiser Brody, a wild hardcore brawler, and in some regional versions, his look and name were tweaked to resemble Hulk Hogan. Now, I want to say more like Hogan because he does do the leg drop like Hogan. So yeah, and his name's Golden Hulk. So that's debatable. I'd say he kind of does a Bruiser Brody thing, kind of looks more like that. But at the same time, I feel like he has a lot of Hulk Hogan stuff. So this is the game's final boss and champion. Golden Hulk is the ultimate test of strength, and his huge frame and menacing energy embody the era's unstoppable championship archetype. Now, as far as I'm concerned though, while he's great, I still feel like Coco Savage should have been the ultimate bad guy, because Coco Savage, when you start playing through the game, everybody else you can kind of just lock them in, but Coco Savage sometimes will break out and go kind of crazy and kind of do his own thing and do those cheap tactics we talked about earlier. But overall, this is supposed to be the boss of the game. So there you have our wrestlers for this version of the game. Now let's talk about the match and flow. It required you to actually have some pacing and understanding of the game. So, and one thing this game put in that a lot of wrestling games didn't at the time, well, it wasn't a lot to choose from, that other wrestling games that say didn't put in the game, where they actually followed, we had to weaken your opponents with strikes before attempting grapples. Now, you could do like the basic body slam off the rip, and usually the pattern here was, at least when I did it, was you have to, and the easiest way to win this game was kind of offsetting yourself, pushing up or down, and keep throwing out punches so the computer walks into them. And in this version of the game, the computer's pretty dumb. It'll keep getting hit by it, and once they're groggy, that's when you can grab and get your move in. So usually they'll let you get away with 2 body slams, then you pick your opponent up, punch him in the face a couple of times. Then you can do a more powerful move like a brain buster or a suplex. You can get 2 of those, and you want to do that when you're in the top of the ring where the ropes are, and then go on top of the ropes, get a jump off the rope, and then if you want to really be extra, you can back up, run and do your jumping splash, and you usually get a 3 count in that sequence, and that'll work for the first wave through. After a while, they'll get hip to it, and they won't take the moves. You have to actually do a few more things in between to wear down your opponent, but overall, that was pretty much your strategy for playing this game. Now, what kind of cultural impact did Mat Mania have? Now, when Mat Mania arrived in 1985, most wrestling games, like we said earlier, were kind of clunky, stiff, and, kind of whatever. But it seemed like it came out of the perfect storm. In 1985, the culture of wrestling was huge, and that led to WWF in the living rooms across America. In my opinion, this was the first game to kind of capture that feel. This is before pro wrestling, this is before WWF WrestleFest. This was in a weird time by itself. And Mat Mania definitely cashed in on that. And also another thing to add with this, it would also influence future wrestling games. Now, like we said earlier, like it wasn't the highest grossing arcade game of its year, Mat Mania did leave fingerprints all over the wrestling genre. Its focus on presentation, realism, will be built upon by later Technos titles like Mania Challenge, its successor, in 1986, WWF Superstars in 1989, introducing official WWF branding and tag team matches, and the coup de grace WWF WrestleFest 1991, and still to this day widely considered one of the greatest arcade wrestling games ever. And each of these games expanded on the blueprint of Mat Mania. Without its foundation, WrestleFest might never have reached the legendary status it enjoys today, or even been made. So let's talk real quick about the sequels and ports of this game. Now, the success of Mat Mania in arcades led to a follow-up, Mania Challenge, and this game released in 1986. But rather than being a completely new game, Mania Challenge was more of an enhanced update to Mat Mania. The gameplay stayed nearly the same, but this time the game did add some groundbreaking features. A 2-player competitive play. Now this was huge for wrestling fans. Instead of just taking on the computer over and over, you and a buddy could actually, or it didn't have to be a buddy, just whoever's in the arcade with you, could finally face off against each other in the ring. And for many arcade goers, this transformed the experience and enhanced it. Suddenly matches weren't just about beating the AI, but about proving you were better at the game than somebody else. Now beyond the multiplayer mode, Mania Challenge introduced a few tweaks to the game. like updated visuals and minor refinements to balance. Translation, this game was hard. Now, you can still use those patterns to a point, but the computer was a lot smarter. It wouldn't walk exactly into your punches like it did in the first game, and the computer was a lot more difficult. It was harder to get your moves off. Now, one of the major upgrades they liked in this game was the reversal system. And this is one of the new features that Mania Challenge put in. Before, when your opponent was like a Coco Savage would get you in those head strikes, this time around, you can actually do a reversal. And you had two you can choose from, as seen here. So overall, in my opinion though, Mat Mania was cool. I feel like the original Mat Mania had more charm. I like the music. And the music, let's talk about the music in Mat Mania 1. The music was pretty catchy. It had one tune. It had a second tune when you got to the boss, when you got to the Golden Hulk, the tune did change. But for the most part, that was the charm of Mat Mania. It was easy at first, it was pretty simplistic, could get hard later on the higher you went up in the waves of characters. And when I say wave of characters, I mean like once you beat everybody once, you'll start over, and it might not be in any particular order, but you'll fight these characters over and over. Now, believe it or not, there is actually ending, so to speak, and a lot of people don't realize that. Once you get the belt and you lose, you'll actually be treated to a little ending, and I'll show it to you right here. Now, if you lose without having the belt, or how many matches you got to do, you'll just get a game over. But if you actually have that, you will get that. And also another thing to mention is the wrestling belt. They do have a lady that comes out and kisses you. I want to say that's inspired off Miss Elizabeth, and that's kind of, it's sketchy because her first debut was 1985, official debut in WF was 1985. So they had to pull some inspiration for that as well. So that was a nice little touch they put there. But yeah, there is an actual ending somewhat in this game for you doing well. But back to what I was saying, I do feel like Mat Mania was the better game because in Mania Challenge, they didn't retain all the characters as well either. It's kind of felt like this was made for 2 players. Kind of what a DLC would be back in the day. That's kind of what it felt like to me, but still a fun game. And there was only a handful of ports for Mat Mania. As far as home releases go, you did have one for the Sharp X8600. I couldn't get that version to run, but I did get one for the Atari 7800. And yeah, it shares the same name as Mat Mania. But it's nowhere near as fun. But for Atari 7800, I'll say it was okay. Basically, you had 2 wrestlers. They both kind of look like Coco Savage a little bit, and they just had the generic, 1 player, 2 player. You could play against the computer as well. And you didn't have a lot of moves. The moves were kind of hard to pull off. The punches, you had like machine gun punches. You could knock the person down. You did have kicks as well. You did have a couple of suplexes, and you had running attacks too. You could run and do either like a sobot kick, or you could run and do like a clothesline kind of thing, or elbows, like a clothesline kind of. But it just wasn't as fun. It didn't capture the. In my opinion, I don't feel like it really. It could have been called anything else. It just took the Mat Mania's name, but I don't feel like it actually played like Mat Mania. And I feel like even though Atari 700 wasn't the most graphically capable machine, I feel like they could have did a little better. But for what it's worth, you did have Mat Mania on the Atari 7800. So take it for what it's worth. And surprisingly, while it never received the NES or Sega Genesis port during its prime, its arcade presence was strong enough to leave a lasting impression. And it paved the way for bigger, officially licensed wrestling games that we'd see dominate in the 90s. So looking back on Mat Mania today, it's like watching an early wrestling tape from the territorial days. It might look simple compared to modern productions, of course, but you can see the DNA of everything that came after. And through my gameplay of modernized, by today's standards, Mat Mania definitely can feel limited. The controllers can be stiff compared to later wrestling games, and AI can sometimes feel stupid at first, and then feel a little cheap once they're ready for you to get off and put more money in the machine, forcing players to rely on timing and repetition rather than deep strategy. But chef's kiss to the moveset. While groundbreaking in 1985, it's still small compared to the wrestling games we would see later. But let's be clear, what Mat Mania does well still shines to this day. The variety of opponents kept the game fresh. The game had match pacing mimics of real pro wrestling psychology, wearing down your opponent before going for the pin. Simple, but powerful. So what do I think about Mat Mania? I remember playing Mat Mania back in the day, a little mom and pop. I didn't play this one at Aladdin's Castle or anything. It was at a little mom and pop shop. It was on called Candyland we used to go to back in the day. It was right there on 45th and Broadway. And that was kind of we called it the cave, me and my buddies, but it was called Candyland at the beginning. And it had basically, you go there buy candy and it had a bunch of arcades machines. This is definitely mid 80s time frame. And I remember seeing it there, and I wasn't playing it at first. I saw just some guy, grown man, he was playing the game over and over and over. And I was so thrilled because he had looped the game. He was really good at it. And he was fighting like Coco Savage over and over. And just at the time, like I said, there was no wrestling game like that. Because I wasn't really a big tag team wrestling guy. I mean, I remember seeing it in arcade, but I didn't really play it. But because, it didn't look that great. But seeing this game for the first time, and I remember I tried to play it afterwards, I got beat by the first guy over and over because I really didn't understand the mechanics. You figure 1985. But at the same time, it was still just to see somebody be able to play the game and know how to play it was pretty cool. And then quick story with that, I got a buddy of mine at work, and he actually has a Mat Mania cocktail table. So these did come in cocktail tables as well, and I think it's very cool. He has it, buddy of his sold it to him for a very, very reasonable price. So you can still find Mat Mania. Mat Mania, it's not a big demand for it. It's a very cool game, but you can still find these every now and then, not for a whole lot of money either. And it's a very cool machine to have. It's simple, but very, very iconic piece of wrestling arcade game. So if you can find Mat Mania in the wild, definitely give it a playthrough. And if you can buy one of these machines for a couple $100, definitely try to pick one up. So yeah, but Mat Mania overall, like I was saying, it was I was just very blown away when he'd fight Coco Savage over and over, and the music at the time sounded really, the music, even though it was repetitive, it sounded pretty good. I mean, some games just had that charm where they had repetitive tunes. Probably one of my favorite being Mr. Do's Castle. I love the tune in that game. So, and we'll cover that game. That's probably one of my all-time favorites as far as if you want to go primitive arcade games or earlier arcade games. So yeah, but overall, Mat Mania, thumbs up. Give it a playthrough, and it definitely paved the way for bigger games we'd see in the future. But let me know your experience with Mat Mania in the comments. Have you ever played this game before? Because this is an oldie. You know, if you ever played this one before, and if you did, how did it make you feel? What did you think, and how did you equate that to the wrestling hype that was the golden age back in the 1980s? Now, if you're interested in more deep dives of these classic retro wrestling games, you can pick one of the 3 videos here. I got one on the history of pro wrestling, one on the history of WWF Superstars, and one on the history of the iconic WWF WrestleFest. So please feel free to check any one of those 3 out if you're interested in more iconic retro wrestling video games. And with that, guys, as always, take care of yourself, protect your inner peace. God bless you. I'm gonna catch you next video. Thanks for watching.